Okay, Year 9, welcome back to day 2 of practicing writing skills. And our focus is still not necessarily on what we would call crafted or finalized writing, but thinking out loud on paper. So using writing as a way to plan and generate ideas. So just as we start moving into today's learning, a few new bits of information for you really that have just been arranged, agreed today, and will start to be disseminated out to parents and to yourselves. With this lockdown, one of the new DFE requirements is that you are assessed and show evidence of your learning. So at the end of each week, at the end of each series of lessons, we're going to be looking for your engagement through evidence of work submitted online. Now, this can be just photographs of the notes you've been doing. You can produce a Word document with the final outcome and send it to us. It might be that we ask you to do a quiz, but by every Friday of every week, you are going to have to evidence engagement with your learning across all your lessons. Now, what we're really hoping is that people understand and are engaged and are enjoying the learning and want to be involved, but there are going to have to be consequences if there's evidence of no engagement. So we don't want to dwell on the negatives, but it's just that awareness that everything that you do, so when you're asked to write down, even if it's a plan for writing, that can be evidence. You can take a photo, send it in as evidence of submission. Okay, so we're looking at this question, how do I become a better writer? Yesterday we said, well, we're better writers by always thinking about our readers, but also we're going to add into that bank what makes us better writers is thinking about word choices. And this word thinking in both of these instances reminds us of being intentional. The best writing is intentional. The best ideas, which is something different, can be spontaneous. The best ideas can just drop into your imagination, into your thoughts. But the best writing, taking those ideas into a story, into a written form, is intentional. We think about it, we deliberate, and we choose. So today we're going to continue thinking about our reader, but we're also going to be thinking about word choices. So this leads right into our key, or our starting activity, I should say. So we're going to look at a vocabulary task to begin with today. Now, there's 2 stages to this, okay? First of all, I'm going to ask you in a minute to pause and record the new vocabulary words to create a glossary in your book. So you're going to just write down the key word in red and its definition. But then you're going to choose which word best completes each sentence. Okay, so just pause there and get those keywords written down. Okay, so we've got glassy, the adjective glassy, which means to resemble glass, like a glass, something that's smooth, transparent, or in a more negative tone, it could be used to describe something lifeless and expressionless. Okay, so that's our vocab word number 1. Number 2, irrecoverably. And this means in a way that cannot be changed, reversed, or recovered. So something that is irrecoverably damaged cannot be mended. Sinister, something harmful or evil. Now you'll see on the other side, we've got 3 sentences, all reminding us and anchoring us back into the images we were looking at yesterday. And your challenge is to decide which word would go with which sentence. Okay, so as I read the sentence, I'm then just going to ask and pause at the end of it, and you're going to decide whether you would use glassy, irrecoverably, or sinister to complete the sentence. Okay, so number 1, the thresher was a beast. Its eyes were 2 small square windows, blank and expressionless, as it devoured the wheat. So, guys, what would you write down for that one? Now, don't worry about writing the whole sentence. You just have to write down glassy, irrecoverably, or sinister. Which word would you use there? We'll go through the answers together in a minute. So, you've made your choice? Brilliant. Number 2, above the field of harvested wheat, the clouds gathered, turning a dark and grey. So which word we choose to complete this sentence? Glassy, irrecoverably, or sinister? Which word would best complete that description? Okay, and the third one, harvest time could be both the best and the worst of times. The cutting and the threshing of the wheat seemed cruel, and yet without this cull we could not survive the winter. So which of the 3 words would complete that one? Okay, so just do a quick tick for this one if you get them right. So the thresher was a beast. Its eyes were 2 small square windows, glassy and expressionless as it devoured the wheat. So we've got a link to glassy there because we've got the idea of windows being glass, and transparent, but also look at the clue there. The word expressionless is linking us back to that definition. Brilliant. Number 2, above the field of harvested wheat, the clouds gathered, turning a dark and blank grey. So that idea of something gathering, of darkness, it's hinting that something harmful or evil might be coming. Brilliant. Sinister. If you've picked sinister, you're right. Now, the third one has to be irrevocably, because that's our only remaining word. But actually, it means that this, the cutting down of the wheat seems cruel. It seems, it cannot be changed, reversed, or recovered. You cannot suddenly put the wheat back together. So it is something that is irrevocably cruel. And yet, without this coal, we could not survive the winter. Brilliant. So if you've got 3 out of 3, wonderful. 2 out of 3, not bad. 1 out of 3 or 0. Think carefully with your choices. So we're going to do this process again, but with a new group of words. So on this one, we've got 4 words, but only 3 sentences. So again, we're going to pause in a minute, give you a chance to record these words. Now, these words themselves will become part of our vocabulary bank when we do our own descriptive writing. They're examples of words, choices of words that can be really impressive, and that's what we want in our writing. So we've got myth, an invented story, concept, or idea. Inexplicable, to describe something that cannot be explained or accounted for. Impregnated, to describe something that is soaked or saturated by another substance. Hoax, a humorous or mean deception, a trick or a lie. So guys, press pause there and write down your words. Okay, so having written those words down, we're now going to think about which of the 3, so one is not going to be used, we could use to complete these sentences. So the same process as before, you don't have to write down the whole sentence, but as I get to the end of the sentence, you're just going to decide which of these words you would use. So number 1, the air was blank with the smell of wheat. It was a strong woody scent that saturated your clothes and hair. So which of our 4 words would best complete that sentence? Make your choice, write it down. Number 2, the teenagers were brought up on the blank of the abandoned hut with the field within the field and the terrible things that had happened to those that had lived there. So which of the words would best complete that description? Brilliant. Now, last one, there was some beauty in the sunset that was, and which word could complete that one? So write down your choices, 1, 2, 3, which words would you choose? And then we're going to go through the answers together. So just press pause, and once you're happy, press play again. Okay, so the air was something with the smell of wheat. Did you get it? Impregnated. So it's this idea that the air was soaked and saturated by the smell of wheat. Really lovely. But actually, can you see we've got the clue there? Saturated comes in the second part of that sentence. It was a strong woody scent that saturated your clothes and hair. So if you put impregnated there, give yourself a tick. That's 1 out of 3 so far. So what about this one then? The teenagers were brought up on there. Now, it wouldn't be hoax, because hoax is that humorous or mean deception, a trick or a lie. So it's not hoax. We've done impregnated. We've used that one. It's not the inexplicable. That wouldn't work. So it's the myth. It was brought up on the myth of the abandoned hut. So this idea that there's this invented story that circulates around maybe where these teenagers live, that this hut was a place where terrible things had happened. Now, don't get me wrong, this could be the lovely start of a story that leads into a hoax, that they trick one of the teenagers into going to that hut and something happens, but it's definitely a myth at this stage. So there was some beauty in the sunset that was. Now, we know we've used myth, we've used impregnated. So hoax doesn't fit. There was some beauty in the sunset that was hoax. It doesn't work. It's not a humorous or mean deception. So inexplicable. So there's something about the beauty in the sunset that cannot be explained. Sometimes when we find things beautiful, it's actually very hard to explain why we find them beautiful. We just do. So guys, so far then we should have now recorded in our books our new key vocabulary. So those are myth, inexplicable, impregnated, and hoax. We've also got glassy, irrecoverably, and sinister. Now, all of these words can help us when we come to write a little bit later. Now, do you remember these images from yesterday? I hope so, because they're going to be used again today. But I just want to give you a little bit more information. So the first thing I want to tell you to help us with our writing today, to help us anchor our writing in some specifics and to help us kind of have a bit of clarity is that these are the wheat plains of a place called Kansas. Now, I've added onto our image up here in the top corner a map of the American states, and there is Kansas in red. Let's think about it. It's right smack bang in the middle of Kansas. There it is. Sorry, of America, surrounded by all these other states. So it's what we call landlocked. There is no coastline, there is no water. We would probably have to travel a long way from Kansas to get to see the sea. You might be recognizing the name Kansas. Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz is from Kansas. So as we begin to develop our ideas today, we can start to bring in some specifics. We can use this proper noun Kansas and the wheat plains to have some information to inform our description as our writing. Right, some other things that you need to know. Right, so there's Kansas in the middle of America, up there in red, brilliant. 90% of Kansas is the landscape of the wheat plains. In other words, the majority of Kansas, its landscape, is made up of these swathes of wheat, of golden corn. So we are looking at a landscape that's dominated by wheat plains. It's what everybody knows. It's what Kansas is known for. And 90%, guys, that's a lot. Now, we saw this image yesterday, and just to give you a bit of specifics to anchor to this image. So we've got grain elevators in this image, and that's an example of the industrial buildings that would help with the production of flour. So this 90% of the Kansas wheat plain landscape is turned into flour, and it's a huge industry. Imagine, it's 90% of the whole state. So there's an awful lot of money or industry that is built up around these wheat plains. And these great big grain elevators and other industrial buildings are used to turn the wheat into flour. So guys, we're in the wheat plains of Kansas, which is in the middle of America. We are looking at 90% of the Kansas landscape being wheat plains, and we've got grain elevators that are used to produce the flour. Now, this one, okay, another bit of information for us, is that mid-September marks the end of the growing season, and it's the harvest time in Kansas. So up until mid-September, the wheat grows, it's left to grow. 90% of the landscape is growing wheat, and then come mid-September, they move to harvest the wheat for flour production. So your next bit, you're going to see some questions, and I want you to answer them. Now, ideally, if you can answer them based on your listening, that's even better. But if you need to, you can pause, rewind to find the answers. But you do need to write down in your books the answers to these questions. Okay? So what time of year is the end of growing season? What is produced from the wheat? Do the wheat fields make up a small or large part of the landscape? So they're just 3 quick questions to kind of just secure and make a note of some of that information that again is going to inform our writing. Okay, so press pause, write down your 3 answers, and we'll look together in a minute. Okay, so what time of year is the end of growing season? Mid-September. Brilliant. So we've got the ominous grey cloud suggesting that they've just made it in time, just before the weather turns. We've got all our wheat harvested. Brilliant, September. What's produced from the wheat? What are the grain elevators producing? Did you get it? Brilliant. Flour, give yourself a tick. And does the wheat fields, are they making up a small or large part of the landscape? Brilliant. It's got to be large. It's 90%. Okay, so that's just checking us in with some information that we can bring into our writing as we move forward. So now the other way is just to kind of get you to think about these images. Can you have a moment just to think about what the link is across the images? How would you link 2 of the pictures, and which picture strikes you as being different? Now I'm going to ask you to pause and just make your own notes in response to these questions. But when we do the answers, there's going to be room for variation. People might see different links. People might link 2 different pictures. So this isn't so much about being right or wrong, but having your own opinion, your own ideas. So press pause, and into your book, write down your answers to these 3 questions. Okay, guys, and remember at this stage, we're just thinking out loud on paper. So this sort of question is, again, all about getting to look at the same images. The more we look at them, the more that's going to kind of come to our the forefront of our imaginations for when we start to describe. So what's the link across the images? Okay, the obvious one, the wheat, the Kansas plain fields. We could say that all of them have clear skies, or, you know, something happening within the skies. let's have a look then. Which two pictures are maybe linked, and what could they be linked for by different reasons? So two of these pictures are linked by the industrial element, the machinery. So we've got the grain elevators and we've got the threshers. We've got two images linked by, brilliant, yep, the process of harvesting the wheat. So the image there of the thresher, the image there of the bale, those two are images of the harvest. Which picture seems different? Which one is the most stand out as being different? Now, again, there's room for variation here. So this isn't about right or wrong, but it is getting us to look at images and to really get ideas into our heads, down on our page for inspiring writing at a later point. So I always think the isolated hut looks quite different to the others. It creates a very different atmosphere, a very different feel of that alienation, that isolation. We've got the kind of, the other ones are all linked by the process of the harvest, whereas that one seems to be untouched as yet. The process of harvest hasn't even begun. Okay, but you might have seen a difference. You might have gone for the one with the bale because of the darkness of the sky. The others kind of focus on clearer skies. This one's very dark and ominous. You might have said the one with the thresher because it's the only one with the thresher. So again, it's not about a right or wrong at this stage, but looking creatively at our images. So what comes next? Okay, so we've been thinking then in that process about these images again, trying to get you guys to see a picture in your mind to help you bring to your mind, to your imagination, different elements of the picture. Yesterday, we used the because, but, so sentences to help us plan and generate ideas. Now, let's be honest, what we wrote yesterday wasn't description, but they are helping us to think about what we want our readers to imagine, see, and feel when we begin to write. And those ideas are going to make the best choices as we develop our writing. We haven't thought about this one yet, so this is activity we're going to come to next then. So when we're thinking about what am I mostly writing about, okay, what am I writing about? What's my description going to be about? What do I want my reader to learn? What am I teaching them? What ideas will I develop? I know we've got the how will I begin, the where will this end, but the majority of our summarizing questions, shortening and selecting the most important ideas that we want in our writing comes from these what questions. Now, what questions tend to be answered by nouns? So guys, we're just going to have a quick reminder of what nouns are. So can you remember nouns? Now for us, we're going to think about 3 different types of nouns today. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to pause and write down these 3 different types of nouns so you have a record in your notes, okay? So number 1, we have common nouns. Now, common nouns are the name of things, locations, objects. So right now, I'm going to say my kitchen, dining room, surrounded by so many nouns, okay? Now, nouns, common nouns, often things that we see. So I look around me, I've got a table, chair, cup, pen, computer, dog, toy carrot being destroyed by dog. No, but that is my Ebbs, and she is a dog, and she has a toy carrot. I've got a fridge, I've got tea towels, I've got dog bowls, I've got cat bowls. So it's the common nouns, it's the things that I see in my environment as I look around me. Locations, I'm in the kitchen, so kitchen is a location. However, we could think about location in terms of places, a room, bathroom, outside, inside. These are all common nouns. And also objects, so things that we can pick up and hold in our hands. So in a minute, you're going to write down common nouns. You can write down 3 of your own examples just to kind of anchor it to an example. Brilliant. Now, there are also proper nouns. Now, proper nouns are the names and titles of people, places, titles. So my name, Mrs. Deutsch. Although I'm at home, so at home I might go by my first name, Amy. I live in Devonport. So we can have the proper nouns for places. I live in Plymouth. I work in Tor Point. So Tor Point, Devonport, Plymouth, these are all the names of places. Also, we can use it for titles, film titles, book titles, people titles. And the biggest characteristic of proper nouns, they begin with capital letters. Okay? So again, if you need it, just write down that definition so we've got a clear anchor point to what these words mean. Now, the hardest one sometimes to get our head around is what we call the abstract nouns. Now, these name the ideas, emotions, and states that we think, feel, but we can't physically touch. So love, fear, stress, happiness. These are all abstract nouns. So actually, when we were doing the activity yesterday about feeling words, the majority of those words were abstract nouns. Panic, fear. Okay, so we are going to use some of those nouns and that revision of nouns to start thinking about our pictures in a little bit more of a particular way. So I want you to choose your favorite picture. Now you might need to go back in the PowerPoint or you might need to open up the PDF so you can have the picture next to you whilst you're listening. And I want you to look at it again really closely. So you're going to choose your favorite of the 4 pictures and look at it really closely. The first thing I want you to do is to list 5 common nouns. Okay, so that's the 5 things that you can see, the locations, the objects in that picture. Okay, brilliant. Now the proper nouns, we already know that these images are from the wheat plains of Kansas in America. So we're all actually going to have the same proper nouns, Kansas, America. Now, if you wanted to be a good investigative kind of writer, if you wanted to be a good creative writer, you could create a more particular name for a town in Kansas for part of your writing. But when we're talking about proper nouns, we're looking to name the place really. And we know from the work we've done, we've got Kansas and we've got America. And I also want you to choose a feeling that you want to create in the atmosphere of your writing and write it down. Now, guys, I know at the moment we can't necessarily print off the pictures, but what I want you to do is to pick your favorite picture. This is the one that I keep getting drawn to. Now, you can see I've got my 5 common nouns. I've got my proper nouns, and in the middle there, I've got my abstract noun. So I'm going to ask you to pause and for your own image, just write down your 5 common nouns, your abstract noun, the feeling that you might want to create or you think is the strongest feeling that the image gives you, and just make a note of Kansas, America. So I'm just going to ask you to pause and to restart the video once you've written down your 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, your 5 common nouns, your key abstract noun for the feeling of the picture, and your 2 proper nouns. Now, I said if you want to be creative or investigative, you could do a quick bit of Googling and just try and find out some of the names of places in Kansas if you want to be really particular. Quick little moment here. There is a lot more in this picture that I could have talked about, but I just went for 5. If you get more than 5, please feel free. If you're quite good at this sort of activity, you can go quick to add more than 5. But as a minimum, we want 5 of those common nouns, 1 abstract noun, and 2 proper. Off you go. Right, brilliant. So I'm hoping now you've made some good choices. Okay, and you've got your choice of image ready to go. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to summarize the image. Now, to do this, we're going to trust your eye to guide you. So when you look back at your favorite image, I want you to just complete these sentence stems. Now, at this stage, we are still summarizing, but this is going to give us as well part of a structure when it does come to write. So look at my sentence stems. In the beginning, my eye is drawn to. Next, my eye goes to. And in the end. So for you, you've got your image. This is my image, okay? So in the beginning, my eye is drawn to the expanse of the sky. Next, my eye goes to the wheat. In the end, I focus on the house. So I've started with the sky, then the wheat, then the house. Now, you might be looking at the same image, but your eye might go to the house first, then the sky, then the wheat. You don't have to follow my order. But what I do want you to do now is to pause your video, okay, and into your book, just copy and complete these summary statements. In the beginning, my eye is drawn to. Next, my eye goes to. And in the end, I focus on. Okay, off you go. Okay, guys. So now, okay, we're just going to do this, what we call a statement of intent. Sounds really posh, doesn't it? When we started this, we said, what makes good writers? And I said, we think about our readers, we think about our word choices. We are thinking. Good writers are always thinking. We're thinking out loud on paper, even before we get to the final product. So these activities that we're just doing to end today's lesson are about intention, making it really clear what we intend to do. So our word choices, those 5 common nouns, The proper nouns, the abstract nouns, are helping us think about what we intend to describe, what we're going to focus on. We then use the summary statements in the beginning, next, finally, to show how we're going to order our writing tomorrow. So we're going to begin to think about describing whatever we said comes to our minds first. These last two tasks are about a statement of intent. Now, this is almost like a writer that works with an editor, that works with a publishing house. They have to actually submit a synopsis of their whole story, their whole book. Even before it's sometimes finished, they use these intentional statements to kind of make it clear what they're intending to write. And your editor, your publisher can be like, yeah, I like that, I don't like that. They can reject it, they can accept it. We're going to just do a really tiny little statement of intent. So it says over here that we're writing a description suggested by the picture. And all I want us to do together is just copy and complete these statements. It's going to give us our statement of intent. So I am writing about a picture of. So now past this point, you cannot change. Okay, if you're committing to write about a picture with this small house in the middle of the wheat field, you're going to commit to it now. If you're going to be writing about the image with the grain elevators, that's what you're saying here. If you're going to commit to writing about the image with the dark cloud and the hay bale, that's what goes here. So I am writing about a picture of. Brilliant. So you're going to fill this in a minute. It then says I will use first or third person and bring in or leave out a character. Now, what we recognize is that our picture gives us a view into a world, but it's quite a narrow view. We don't have any people in our pictures, but we can imagine if we wanted to bring a character in. We could imagine whether we want to use first person. So I was working that summer on the wheat plains of Kansas. I had lived in this area all my life and couldn't wait to escape if I could. So you're going to decide whether you're going to use first person, like you're going to tell the story from the point of view of a character. Third person, we don't use I's, me's. We're telling we might be describing the picture from a objective distance point of view. So you could say from the third person, the wheat plains of Kansas were alive at this time of year, full of hope and opportunity for the harvest to come. So you can use third person. Now, really, whether you're going to bring in or leave out a character, it just helps with the planning stages that we're going to, and some of the choices we're going to make. And just to remind ourselves of this key information, the picture is from the what plains? Wheat plains. In what place? Kansas. In what country? America. Now, this last bit, I want the reader to feel a sense of. Now, I'm going for loneliness, alienation, and smallness. I meant to make those blank. Sorry, guys. So you're going to make your statement, I want the reader to feel a sense of. Now, you might say a sense of beauty, a sense of wonder, a sense of fear. And again, that's going to help us make decisions. So, guys, you're going to write your statement of intent. So you just copy and complete each of those statements. You can listen again if you need to. Off you go, guys. See you in a minute. Okay, we're ready. So this is the end of our lesson for today. Thank you so much for listening. Now, guys, I do need to reiterate. Yes, we're working at note level. These past two lessons, we've been using note-taking sentences in our books to show evidence of our thinking processes and our response. Today, you have been asked to record key vocabulary. In terms of evidencing your engagement with the work, you can either take a photo of your notes and send them to me via Show My Homework or to your teacher. You can upload it, email it, but we are going to be asking for evidence of the work you've done this week. Okay? That's a really important aspect of lockdown learning this time round, that we need to see you engage. We want to reward you for doing the work and sending it to us, but at the same time, we're going to be checking that you are doing it, guys. So feel free to return to any bit of the work that you've missed. This video will stay on YouTube indefinitely, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how this writing and thinking process is going to lead to some description tomorrow and Friday. Okay, guys, see you later. Bye.